Hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. First off, you may have noticed a name change. When I started doing book reviews under Mistress of the Damned, I kind of thought I might be throwing another commentary along the lines of, hey, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. I'm Mistress of the Damned, nice to meet you. I have since realized that I do not have time for that. And also, I don't really have the inclination to watch modern newscasts. I find them all horribly deceptive and one-sided. I have my news sources that I watch, but frankly, they are already saying what needs to be said, and much better than I could, kind of with that anarcho-capitalist spin that I love so much. So I'm going to stick with my strong suit, which is books, and then I'm going to tell you what I think about them. To that end, I have decided I need a more bookish name for this channel, and because I am a word nerd and I love alliteration, I went with Loki's Librarian. Now, I think the library is self-explanatory, librarian being me. But what is with Loki? Well, chaos, baby, chaos. Anarcho-capitalist. You may also have noticed the only really real consistency in my channel is I've really got to get like a light out curtain over there because that's really distracting having a bright spot of light on my face like that. You may have noticed the only real consistency in my channel are the books on the presidents at the end of the month. Otherwise, it's pretty chaotic over here. I kind of pick what I like and I read it. My interests change frequently. My reading list has already changed multiple times this year. I hadn't actually planned to read Rise and Fall of the Third Reich this month. It just kind of happened. Hello, kitty. My library is always growing. My interests change. So welcome to Loki's Library. I am the librarian Katrina. This is where I am reading through my enormous library of books, and then I give you a synopsis and I tell you what I think of them. This month/week's book is, of course, this enormous monstrosity, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Shirer. Now, I was supposed to read parts 3 and 4 this week, but it's pretty dense reading. I got through part 3 this week. The whole part, all of part 3, is called The Road to War. This is Falfy. He came with the name Alfalfa, and we just call him Falfy because he's a fluffy Falfy. It's pretty dense reading. This whole part 3 is called The Road to War, and it's about Hitler's takeover and the appeasement that we probably all heard about in school. At least you did if you went to school. When I went to school, I don't know what they're teaching these days. I heard they're not even teaching Nazism because the flag is scary. Antifa's not as scary as Nazism because, Antifa are fucking morons, but whatever. So I'm hoping part 4, when the war is actually explained, will be a bit faster. We'll see. This week's review, Book 3, The Road to War. Now, almost as soon as he received the chancellorship of Germany, Hitler began rearming Germany in violation of the Versailles Treaty. And he was not really sly with this. I think he thought he was being sly, but they knew, all right? I mean, Britain and France knew what was going on. And Britain asked him, what's up? And Hitler was like, nothing. Just building some boats. But I swear, we'll only keep it to 35% of your naval capacity. And Britain didn't really want another war right that moment, so they were like, okay, that seems fair. Just keep it below our capacity so, we can still kick your ass if we need to. And I don't know why they thought Germany would, but they did for whatever reason. Air Force, armaments, tanks, submarines. Hitler was fully rearming Germany. Additionally, he wanted Germany to be fully self-sufficient, not needing to do imports of coal, oil, gasoline, rubber, food, or clothing. He wanted everything handled internally, and that's an admirable goal, right? A nation should be as independent as it can be, but recognize your limitations. Like, for example, rubber trees, where we get rubber for tires, don't grow in Europe. They grow in South America. That's why the rubber tire wasn't invented until, the 19th century. There are no known oil reserves under Germany. At least I don't think there are. If there are, they weren't available back then, because I'm pretty sure Hitler would have exploited the fuck out of that. So, he didn't know the limitations of Germany. I'm falling backwards here with this cat. He weighs 18 pounds. He's a huge cat. So he didn't really go with his limitations. He didn't really have, he may have had textile mills, that I don't know, but he wanted all of this to be self-sufficient. Of course, the only way to do that is through conquest. Now, Hitler's first success after he started his rearmament at territorial takeover was the Saar, which had been ceded to France during the Treaty of Versailles. When Hitler took over and everything started kind of booming in Germany, the Saar saw this and thought, we could use some of that here. And so they unanimously voted to rejoin Germany. Now, I think, as near as I could tell from the book, this was not coerced. not in the way that Hitler sent in his Nazis to Austria and the Czech Republic and even Poland to try and force the issue. They said, yes, we want to rejoin Germany. And Hitler kind of did a little happy dance and swore up and down to France that if they would let the Tsar go peacefully, that would be the end of it. He'd be happy, he'd leave the rest of the demilitarized zone alone, and France said, okay, we also don't really want another world war, so we're going to let this one go. Just stay on that side of the DMZ. Then on March 7th, 1936, German troops marched into the DMZ at the Rhineland. And France missed their opportunity to quash it right then. If they had rolled in the tanks in opposition immediately and said, no, you swore the Tsar was it, you're now in the DMZ, the Rhineland belongs to us, this is a no-go. It would have stopped there. I think that at Nuremberg, the generals that were on trial all agreed to that. They all said, yeah, Hitler was sweating it, worried that France might roll in and argue the point, but when they didn't, he again did a happy little dance, just took over the Rhineland without a shot fired. And it kills me, because everybody's acting like Hitler was this liar par excellence, like nobody could tell what he was up to. And he literally told the world what he was going to do. He spelled it all out in Mein Kampf. Now, I understand that this book was a bitch and a half to read through. I've read excerpts of it through in high school and when I was in German class in college, but it's dense reading, and it rambles a lot, kind of like I'm doing right now, but it was all there. He spelled it out, and one can hardly blame Hitler if you're not going to take him at his word. More importantly, his actions backed up those words, all right? They backed up the words he wrote in his book. They were in direct contradiction to the words he spoke in conference, but remember, actions speak up louder than words, guys. So when a politician says one thing and does another, follow his actions. That is who he really is. All right? What's that old joke? How can you tell a politician is lying? His lips are moving. Anytime they talk, they're fucking lying. Now, the rest of the world was watching this. They were watching France's refusal to step up and realized that when war came, France was not going to be fighting on anybody's side. At least not with any level of effect. They were also sweating repopulation after World War I. It wasn't just Germany that hadn't had a real chance to repopulate. France was also struggling with that. And so they really didn't want this war. Russia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Yugoslavia suddenly saw what was coming loud and clear. They saw what Germany was doing, and it wasn't France riding to the rescue. They were basically on their own as far as Germany was concerned. On January 30th, 1937, Hitler formally withdrew Germany from the Treaty of Versailles. He was no longer hiding Germany's buildup. He wasn't boldly advertising it, but he wasn't trying to keep it secret anymore either. Slowly, the European alliances that had been sustaining peace since World War I started to fall apart. They figured if Germany was going to be allowed to withdraw from Versailles without comment from anybody, they were not really bound to it either, and they started withdrawing from the Locarno Pact. Now, the Locarno Pact was signed 7 years after Versailles. Versailles was signed in 1918. Locarno Pact came about in December 1925. It was an agreement between... So this would have been not Hitler that signed it, but the Chancellor before him, or the Chancellor in 1925. So you had Germany, France, Belgium, Great Britain, and Italy all agreed to maintain the peace in Europe. So those were the big countries. Those were the ones that were going to maintain the peace. Hitler wanted no part of that anymore because that was tying his hands and keeping him from doing what he wanted to do, which was reclaim all of Germany. I think he wanted all of Germany as it was under the Habsburg Empire, which was huge. He makes multiple references throughout his writing and in contact with diplomats about Britain being this great power. And okay, it was. I mean, the sun started to set on Britain when we kicked their ever-loving butts in 1776. 76 to, 87 or whatever it was. But the sun started to set on them, and their empire started to collapse, but as far as Europe goes, the Habsburgs had more than anything, hands down. That's a whole other book. I'm not going to go into it, but that's what he wanted for Germany. He wanted those Habsburg lands reconstituted under him. First up, he wanted Austria. Now, it seems like Hitler didn't actually like Austria. I think he just wanted to tell them to suck it because they had rejected him as an art student. That's conjecture. He really was just a megalomaniac, and I have nothing to base that on. I'm just trying to boggle my mind around how this all happened. That's something people will be boggling about for a few more centuries, I think. He wanted anyone of German descent to live in Germany, and, master race and all. Now, instead of getting them to just move back to Germany, he decided the land on which they were living was German land, and so it must belong to Germany, because they were Germans. So first he took Austria. And France and Britain were like, okay, I mean, don't do it again. Austria seems cool with it, so yeah, you can have Austria. Italy, who was nominally Austria's protector at this time, was like, okay, you can have Austria. We don't want it anymore. We're done with it. Now, they didn't quite get the full story of all that happened in Austria. They knew that the Chancellor Adolphus had been assassinated, but Hitler was like, no, that wasn't my Nazis who shot them, even though it totally was his Nazis who shot them. They were in prison, some of them awaiting execution. But he was like, no, I didn't know anything about that. That wasn't my guys who did that. They didn't know about the internal, like the Nazis terrorizing and bullying tactics, the strong-arm tactics that had replaced the Chancellor and kind of pushed the president out, and replacing it with a Nazi figurehead. They saw that Austria seemed okay with it, and since Austria was cool with it, they let it alone. Hitler next decided he wanted the Sudetenland. Now, this was a part of Europe that under the Treaty of Versailles had been ceded to Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia basically it didn't really exist as a country prior to Versailles, and it had a bunch of little satellite areas that conglomerated together and formed this new nation, and the Sudetenland was part of that. I'm probably really mudding up the history there. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, but there were a lot of Germans living in the Sudetenland, which was part of the Czechoslovakia. So Hitler basically manufactured a terrorist crisis. The terror going on in the Sudetenland was completely manufactured by the Nazis. There was no Czech terror. It was Hitler looking for an excuse to roll tanks. The British, French, and Italians sort of saw that. And they didn't want war. So they were like, well, hey, let's talk. Let's go to Munich. We'll meet you in Munich. That's your ground, your territory. Munich was Hitler's city. He loved Munich. That was where he moved when he left Austria. And in September 1938, British, French, and Italians all sat down with Germany in Munich in September 38. You notice who was not at the table? Maybe Czechoslovakia, the country that was about to be invaded. Hitler refused to be in the same room as the Czech diplomats because they were Slavic and hence inferior to the master race. Nice, right? In the treaty negotiating the return of the Sudetenland, they even included wording to protect Germany against Czechoslovakian aggression. It's classy. And they carved up Czechoslovakia to Hitler's satisfaction, and what was left to fend for itself. I mean, by the time the first shots were fired in Poland 11 months later, Czechoslovakia had functionally ceased to exist as a nation. 1 month after being gifted the Sudetenland, so this would be November 10th, 1938, we had the Night of Glass. Again, you may or may not have heard of this, depending on the level of education at your particular public school. In Paris, it starts in Paris, believe it or not, a Jewish refugee, Herschel, Grinspan, I'm really sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, he shot a German diplomat at the German embassy as retaliation for Herschel's family having been deported to Poland. So in retaliation, the Sicherdienst, which is the Gestapo, they're the internal security arm of the Nazi party, attacked Jewish communities across Germany. There were multiple rapes, murders, arson. People who ran out of the burning buildings were shot. Millions of dollars of damage. And then to add serious insult to the injury, Germany then charged the Jewish community for the damages. I think they charged them like 1 billion marks for the damages that they caused against the Jewish community. And they started confiscating Jewish property. And anybody who filed an insurance claim against the damages had their claim immediately confiscated by the state to help pay for the damages that Germany had caused. Fun aside, the rapes were actually considered the worst crime than the murders because it violated Germany's racial purity laws. So good news, feminists. Germany actually did prosecute the perpetrators for rape. So, yay, equality? Not addressed in the book was how the Jewish community in Europe started to react to this. Now, in Austria, it gets addressed. So when Germany rolled into Austria and decided they wanted Austria, the Jewish population in Austria got the fuck out. They started selling everything they could for whatever they could get for it and fled. He doesn't address how they handled it in Germany, if they were also leaving as quickly as they could. I'm sure some of them were, and I'm equally sure some of them were unable to for whatever reason. I can't imagine they didn't see it coming and got out if they possibly could. Like the greedy little man-child he was, once Hitler had the Sudetenland, he wanted Danzig, the city in Poland, not the band. He basically demanded that Poland cede Danzig and a quarter to, I think it was the other German territory. I feel like Germany got split. I could be wrong on that. But he wanted a corridor to Danzig and the North Sea. And Poland was like, no, we will not be doing that. For a while, I don't know if it's still a thing, but for a while, back in like the 80s, there was a thing to make jokes about dumb Polish people. I don't think they were nearly as dumb as people like to make bad jokes about. I mean, even the author seems to think on some level that Poland deserved what they got because they were too stupid to accept Soviet aid. England and France, when they were trying to broker a mutual aid agreement with Poland, asked Poland about having the Soviet Union come to their immediate aid in case of German aggression. And Poland was like, nope, we don't think they'll be of much help. The author thought that was a huge mistake on their part. I think that Poland looked at both options and said, we're not getting help from either of them. Germany is clearly aggressive to us, and the Soviet Union wants our back flank. And for large chunks of Polish history, it's been split between those two nations. So they had a reason to trust neither country. And to deny that, decline that assistance, I guess. So this left, the author's writing one thing. Because they said no, this did leave the Soviet Union open to signing a non-aggression pact of their own with Germany. Included in that non-aggression pact and discovered in the documents at Nuremberg was that they agreed once Hitler got to X point in Poland, Russia would come in and take the other half of it. So, yeah, Poland, I think, was right. They paid a heavy price for it, but they were right. On August 23rd, 1939, Germany and Soviet Union signed their non-aggression pact. For the next 9 days, England, France, and Italy was an ally of Germany. He also didn't want war because he figured that France and England would bomb the fuck out of Italy, he being Mussolini. So he didn't want war either. They all scrambled to get Germany to agree not to attack Poland in his typical Hitler fashion. Germany threw up ridiculous roadblocks to make sure that this détente never happened. And on September 1st, 1939, German tanks rolled across the border into Poland. So this was something I didn't know prior to reading this book. Hitler had such an iron grip on the media that Germany actually believed, like the citizens of Germany actually believed that Poland had attacked Germany. By September 3rd, 1939, Britain and France had declared war on Germany, and that was it. Everything started. Like I said, this whole section was really dense reading. I'm sure there are bits that were highly relevant that my brain just didn't process because it was really densely packed. And that's it for this week. I now have parts 4, 5, and 6 to read. That's 522 pages. Fortunately, parts 5 and 6 are really short. So I'm going to read like mad. I'm going to read like mad over the next 6 days. God, I hope I can finish this. I mean, it's dense. Some sections go really fast. Others not so much. I'm hoping with the actual war talk going on, it'll be a bit faster. It's 522 pages. That's 87 pages a day. I can read a page in about 2 minutes on this particular book because of, how the size of the book. So that's 3 hours a day. I can do that. I can read 3 hours a day. I can make this happen. So if you like what you saw, make sure you share my videos. Make sure to subscribe to my page. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you like the name. Let me know if I should change it. I don't think I want to go back to Mistress of the Damned. I think I definitely want to keep something book focused to help, book review. This is what we do. But I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.